I think you need to make me a co-host so I can share my screen.
Hai, halo, apa kabar? Senang sekali hari ini bisa bike to work. Terbayangkan kalau seluruh masyarakat Indonesia bisa melakukan kegiatan semacam ini. Tentunya polusi udara di negara kita akan berkurang dan badan kita akan tambah sehat. Nah, bagaimana agar semua masyarakat bisa menikmati bike to work di kota-kota di Indonesia? Tentunya kegiatan ini bisa dinikmati secara aman dan nyaman apabila kita tinggal di sebuah kota yang telah terancang dengan baik. Demi berkembangnya kota-kota di Indonesia dan demi fasilitas yang memadai, kami FTUI selalu berusaha untuk menghadirkan para perancang kota yang handal. Oleh karena itu, tahun ini Fakultas Teknik Universitas Indonesia dengan bangga mempersembahkan program studi Magister Perencanaan Wilayah dan Kota. Program Studi Magister Perencanaan Wilayah dan Kota atau PWK bertujuan untuk melatih para calon perancang kota agar dapat mengimbangi pesatnya kemajuan teknologi, pertumbuhan penduduk, dan juga ekonomi di dunia. Kami berharap program studi ini dapat menjadi pusat pengembangan ilmu yang multidisiplin serta menciptakan lulusan profesional yang handal dalam perencanaan kota. Bukankah begitu, Mas Gamal?
Betul sekali, Pak Henry. Tentunya lulusan PWK nantinya akan menjadi lulusan handal yang dapat berkontribusi dalam skala nasional maupun internasional. Prodi PWK menekankan interdisiplin dari pengembangan standar perencanaan wilayah dan perkotaan dan berorientasi pada perencanaan berbasis kemajuan teknologi. Hal ini kami lakukan demi kesejahteraan seluruh masyarakat agar dapat hidup di daerah berbasis kota cerdas dan pembangunan berkelanjutan. Kelebihan lulusan PWK FTUI terletak pada fleksibilitas yang dimiliki. Hal ini dibuktikan dengan dibukanya 3 program peminatan, yaitu perencanaan tata ruang kota, perencanaan lingkungan kota, dan perencanaan infrastruktur dan transportasi.
Pelaksanaan pendidikan dengan penjaminan mutu akademik terbaik menjadi prioritas kami dalam mempersiapkan mahasiswa yang siap terjun ke dunia profesional. Dalam penjaminan mutu akademik, kami berkoordinasi dengan unit penjaminan mutu akademik baik di fakultas maupun universitas. Mata kuliah yang kami susun juga menjadi perangkat untuk menumbuhkan kemampuan dalam hal kematangan intelektual, kemandirian, dan kreativitas. Peserta dapat mencapai gelar Master Perencanaan Wilayah dan Kota (MPWK) dalam 2 tahun, serta sertifikat keahlian dari Ikatan Ahli Perencana IAP. Prodi PWK akan menciptakan lulusan tenaga ahli yang tak hanya memiliki kompetensi profesional, namun juga memiliki pengakuan formal yang terdaftar.
Sebagai asosiasi profesi perencanaan wilayah dan kota terbesar di Asia Tenggara, Ikatan Ahli Perencanaan Wilayah dan Kota atau IAP akan banyak bekerja sama dengan Prodi Magister PWK FTUI. Lebih dari 52% penduduk Indonesia tinggal di perkotaan dan lebih dari 600 kabupaten kota masih terus melakukan pembangunan kota, desa maupun pengembangan kawasan lainnya. Sehingga target pembangunan dan perencanaan kota kita sampai saat ini masih sangat tinggi. Indonesia membutuhkan banyak tenaga profesional yang kompeten dan dapat menjalankan keahliannya dengan penuh tanggung jawab. Kami siap mengawal para calon perencana wilayah dan kota dari PWK FTUI.
Saya, Bambang Brojonegoro, Menteri Riset dan Teknologi, Kepala Badan Riset dan Inovasi Nasional, mengucapkan selamat atas dibukanya program studi Magister Multidisiplin Perencanaan Wilayah dan Kota Fakultas Teknik Universitas Indonesia. Harapan saya, semoga program studi ini dapat menjadi wadah yang baik dalam menghasilkan SDM yang andal, profesional, dan bertanggung jawab. Indonesia memiliki visi untuk menjadi negara maju berpendapatan tinggi melalui perekonomian berbasis inovasi. Hal ini hanya bisa dicapai dengan kualitas SDM yang menguasai teknologi dan mampu menjawab tantangan serta memberikan solusi atas berbagai masalah yang ada di masyarakat. Semoga program perencanaan wilayah dan kota Fakultas Teknik Universitas Indonesia terus konsisten dalam berkontribusi untuk kemajuan dunia perencanaan wilayah dan kota di Indonesia dan dunia.
Bagaimana? Tertarik? Bergabunglah dengan kami di Magister Perencanaan Wilayah dan Kota dan menjadi kontributor untuk kemajuan perkembangan kota di Indonesia.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So good morning, good day, and good evening. This year, our Faculty of Engineering is heading to the 57th Dies Natalis. Also, this year, our university launched several new programs, including the new Master Program of Urban and Regional Planning, or Perencanaan Wilayah dan Kota, PWK. So today's webinar is specially brought to you under the cooperations from the Department of Architecture and the new Master Study Program, Urban and Regional Planning Perencanaan Wilayah dan Kota, Faculty of Engineering Universitas Indonesia. So welcome to all of you to the 11th webinar BIG, Build It Green, with title Sustainability of Future Cities and Digital Urban Economics. The terms of conditions of this webinar, we will conduct this webinar in English, and also we expect the participants to maintain the courtesy during the webinar. Thank you. Okay, we would like also to ask the attendees to write the questions to the given link below. For those of you who want to ask in Bahasa, it's also allowed that our team will translate it for you. This is the link. Thank you. Okay, and also for the participants who have registered on our website, please enter the link below into the browser to ensure the attendance and eligibility to get the e-certificate from this link. And from this moment, we would like to thank to the Indonesian Associations of Urban and Regional Planners, IAP Indonesia, for the support. Let me introduce myself. My name is Opachana Dewi. I'm the head of Urban and Regional Planning PWK Master Program FTUI, and also the coordinator of Architecture and Sustainability Research Cluster. And here I would like also to introduce our honorable panelists, Mr. Henry Andi Simarmata. He is the chairman of Indonesian Association of Urban and Regional Planners, Indonesia. Also, I would like to introduce you to our two honorable speakers. The first one is Professor Jeffrey Huings, BA, MA, PhD, Professor of Geography and Regional Science of Economic of Urban and Regional Planning, University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, Indonesia, USA, sorry. And our second honorable speaker is Dr. Ahmad Gamal, PhD, the Director of Innovations and Science Technopark, Universitas of Indonesia, and also the Board of Advisor in Smart City, Universitas Indonesia. So let me greet to all of you. Hello, Prof. Jeffs, and also Pak Gamal, Pak Andi as well. How are you?
We are fine, thank you.
Okay, hello Pak Dalhar as well. Hello Pak Dalhar. Thank you so much. Okay, yeah, hello Pak Dalhar. So let me come back to the slides again. Thank you. Yeah, I just want to greet to all of you and also to see your faces this morning and evening. Already, hopefully that all of you in a very good conditions. Okay, thank you. We shall continue. Okay, before we heading to the presentations, we will hear about the opening remarks from the head of the Department of Architecture, Faculty of Engineering Universitas Indonesia, Bapak Dr. Ing Dalhar Susanto. Pak Dalhar, silakan Pak Dalhar, please.
Thank you, Bu Ova. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning to all the participants of this seminar. Thank you for joining this seminar, this big seminar, Build It Green. This is already the 11th series. Today we have the title Sustainability of Future Cities and Digital Urban Economics. First of all, I would like to send you the greetings from the Dean of Faculty of Engineering Universitas Indonesia, Mr. Henry Budiono. Unfortunately, he cannot join this event due to the other ceremonial event. Today we have inaugurating ceremonial for our new professor in the Faculty of Engineering. Secondly, I would like to welcome to all of honorable guests. First, Professor Jeffrey from Geography and Regional Science of Economics of Urban and Regional Planning, University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, USA. Secondly, to Mr. Henricus Andi Simarmata, the chairman of IAPI, and also Mr. Ahmad Gamal, the director of DPSTP Universitas Indonesia. And of course, to Ibu Ova Chandra Dewi, the moderator and also the initiator of the seminar. So thank you again to all of you. I would like to mention that this year we celebrate the 57 establishing of Faculty of Engineering Universitas Indonesia. This year, we also have the honor to introduce the new program that also already mentioned by Ibu Ova. The new program, it is Master Program in Urban and Regional Planning Study. I hope that this new program, through this new program, we can have more contribution in creating, designing, and influencing future cities that are rooted in the positive values of economic, social, and environmental. Finally, I hope that this seminar today will be success and we will have a benefit from the discussion and from the seminar. So again, congratulations and enjoy the seminar. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Ibu Ova.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Dr. Ing Dalhar Susanto, the head of Department of Architecture, Faculty of Engineering, Universitas Indonesia. So I would like to remind you once again, for the attendees can ask questions to the panelists by using the following link. And also for the participants that already registered on our website, please input the link below on your browser to confirm your attendance and eligibility to get the e-certificate. Thank you. Now I would like to go to the final or the most important event for today. We would like to hear the presentations from first one from the Professor Geoffrey Hewings. Please, Prof, the time is yours. We will help you to prepare the slides for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ibu Ova, for this invitation, and for Pak Gamal for reuniting again. Gamal obtained his PhD at the University of Illinois, and Pak Dalha, thank you very much for this nice introduction. And first thing I'd like to say is congratulations on forming this program. This is really exciting, and it's something that I think will really, really benefit Indonesia. And I think in your introductory comments, you showed that 52% of the population is in urban areas, and the expectation is over the next 20 or 30 years that will grow to probably 60 or 70%. And that's going to present enormous challenges for the economy. And having a cadre of professional planners that the country can tap will be very excited. And I just want to hope that you will feel free to contact us at the University of Illinois to help you, because we've had a long tradition of relationships with Indonesia and with urban and regional planning. And I'm particularly proud of the fact that 21 of my PhD students have been from the Department of Urban and Regional Planning, including one person you just saw a little earlier, Minister Bambang, and Vice Minister So I think this is we've had a long tradition of relationships, provided perspective from somebody who planning, and I feel that a lot of times missed an opportunity to the other side because they haven't really focused enough attention, including on the economics that underlie our economy. And so part of my sort of brainwashing students in the urban regional planning program is to try to get them to think in these terms. I don't particularly want them to be modelers or analysts, but I really want them to understand how economies work, in particular metropolitan economies. So if you move to the next slide, what I'd like to do is just give you a quick introduction to the Regional Economics Applications Lab, which is now well over 30 years old. It started off as a collaborative venture between Federal Reserve and the university. And basically what we try to do is get our students to be able to contribute both to the academic literature, but also to learn how to translate this work into a language that is to policymakers. And you can see we've had participants from a number of countries, sometimes as many as 15 or 16 different countries. And we average about 25 to 30. Over the 30 years, we've had over 500 some international visitors who spent 3 months to enroll with us. Many of them are visiting scholars. We have also about half of the participants in Illinois in a number of different departments. We've underwritten about 50 doctoral dissertations in the contributing departments. And the most important thing is that we've helped form similar labs in a number of countries like Chile, Brazil, Spain, United Kingdom, and China. And my dream is to be able to form such a lab in Indonesia. So I look forward to working with Ibu Ova to see whether we can make this happen. Next slide, please. So my basic presentation comes from a perspective that metropolitan economies are incredibly complicated. And before we can address issues of sustainability, we really need to understand how the metropolitan economy of interest works. And I must admit, I have been somewhat frustrated with a lot of planning decisions that have been made with only what I would call a cursory or a very limited understanding of what Michael Batty refers to the system of cities or the network of networks that really characterize metropolitan economies. Now, I'm not going to talk about Jakarta, even though I've done quite some work there. I want to draw on my experience from Chicago, but I want you to think about how this could be translated into an understanding of some of the major metropolitan areas in Indonesia. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on initial explorations of what I call structural interdependence, and I'll make that clear in the future slides. And then I want to ask some questions. A lot of people, when they talk about sustainability, say, problem is we're traveling too much. And what we should do is increase densities because this will reduce travel demands. Well, we ran an experiment in Chicago, and I'll show you the results. How do we plan for future growth in population and employment in a metropolitan context? And how do we do this in a way that might really be sympathetic with notions of sustainability? And the final thing that I just want to raise, but I don't have a lot to report on this, is are the notions of sustainability and equity goals in conflict, or are they complementary? Next slide, please. So just to give you a perspective for those of you who haven't been to the US, you can see a map here of Chicago and Illinois. On the left, Urbana-Champaign is about 200 kilometers due south of Chicago. On the right is the spatial divisions of the Chicago metropolitan region that we have used to illustrate the analysis that I'm going to talk about, basically the central business district, the rest of the city of Chicago, the inner suburbs, and the outer suburbs. Next slide, please. And what we wanted to look at is basically, how does this economy work? And what are the nature and strengths of the interrelationships? And we looked at this in terms of three levels, if you like. First of all, the flows of goods and services. And then we looked at the bilateral flows of people and the associated income that they earn. And then finally, we looked at the flows of expenditures on goods and services, in other words, shopping. And basically, the results are based on a series of models that we have developed that link the demographic and economic parts of an economy. And what we're able to do is look at changes in economic actions on income distributions, status in the labor force, or migration behavior. And at the same time, we're also able to explore how changes in consumption spending or employment status, if you move from being employed to unemployed and so forth, how they affect the various economic activities in the metro area. Next slide, please. And so here is a sort of diagrammatic representation, which I'm not going to go through, but it's basically a series of flows. We produce goods and services. We pay wages and salaries to the employees. They go back to their residence and they take that money with them. And then they decide what they're going to spend that money on housing, buying clothes, buying food. And so we have a shopping expenditure. And then we put it all together and we have a total set of flows by zone for the whole metropolitan economy. And this is just a 4x4 division, but we've done it in much, much more detailed analysis, and I'll just show representation of that later. Next slide, please. And so one of the things that was most surprising is when we just looked at the flows of goods and services, there was very little interdependence within those four regions within the city of Chicago, within the metropolitan area of Chicago. Most of them were pretty self-sufficient. In other words, what was produced there was sourced from inputs that came from within that sub-region. Very little interregional trade within the metropolitan area. A lot of trade between Chicago and the rest of the US, but not a lot of trade in goods and services within the metro area. Next slide, please. But then when we looked at everything, the flows of commuters, the flows of income, and then the flows of expenditures, we see a very, very different picture. The region is very interdependent. And yes, the within region expenditures still account for the largest share of the total, but there's a great deal of dependence that takes place. People are moving from the suburbs into the city to work. They then go back home. But then when they go to spend their money on goods and services, they do that in a variety of different places. And if you look at a couple of examples of this in the next slide, this is the flows that take place. Can we have the next slide, please? This is the flows that take place centered on the central business district. And you can see that almost 50% of them take place within the central business district, but a large percentage, almost 51%, come from the rest of Chicago, the suburbs, and the outer suburbs. And this is a combination of commuting and expenditures on shopping. But then when we look at the suburbs, next slide, please, we'll see that it is a little bit more self-sufficient, with 64% of the interactions taking place within the suburbs, but there's still a significant amount of impacts that come from other parts of the region. So the basic message from this is our metropolitan areas are incredibly interdependent when we take account of a broader definition other than just the movement of goods and services. And I think this is a feature that really needs to inform planning decisions and not assume that we have this sort of myopic view that what happens in the city stays in the city, what happens in the suburbs stays in the suburbs, and so on. Next slide, please. So basically, what we learn from this is that this interdependence requires movement. And for those of you who are really interested in sustainability, the first question is, how can we reduce this movement? Can we increase housing densities? Can we move more jobs closer to where people live in the hope that we can reduce the volume of flows? And so these are issues that we wanted to explore. And so we did. And we had a scenario where we tried to do this, to increase densities, to increase job work relationships so that people would not have to commute quite as far. And what happened is total vehicle miles traveled only decreased by 5 to 7%. And this created some real concern. Why was this? Because if we're going to think about a sustainable city, these are sort of initiatives that we should be moving. The problem is there's a mismatch of local jobs with the occupational characteristics of local residents. Yes, there are jobs close to me, but they're not providing the type of opportunities for somebody with my background that I can work in. So I have to go elsewhere. Secondly, and really critically, there's been an increasing share of two-income households. It's difficult to find suitable jobs for both members of a household in the same location. So often one option that is taken, people live close to the location of one member of the household and the other one commutes. Thirdly, Americans do not behave according to central place theory. They do not go to the nearest place offering the good or services. Yes, they might do that for food, but when it comes to buying clothes or buying furniture or buying cars, they tend to move around. They love to shop. They love variety. And of course, all those activities result in increasing vehicle miles traveled. The fourth issue is that certain activities, the ballet, symphony, opera, theater, good restaurants, are specialized and indivisible. You can't put 1/100th of an opera house in each location in a metropolitan area. They cannot be offered everywhere. So that requires movement. And so what we found when we dug into this is that the journey to work trips within the metropolitan area only accounted for about 20 to 25% of the total trips. Yet all of our public transportation systems are planned to accommodate those trips. What about the other 75%? So basically, a lot of people said, yeah, what we need is a much more flexible system. So it's wonderful we have things like Uber and Lyft that are offering opportunities for people to travel and they don't have to use their cars. But what we've noticed is the number of vehicles on the roads in cities has increased significantly, increasing congestion and the vehicle miles traveled. Why? Because most of these are single-person trips. So basically, as we address issues of sustainability, we've got to dig deeper into the economic structure of our economies and really understand the full dimensions and not just focus on a very narrow spectrum. Next slide, please. And so one of the concerns, and this is particularly germane to what is happening in Indonesia, as you move from 52% urban to 60 or 70%, how are you going to do this? How are you going to accommodate this in a sustainable fashion? So what we did is we integrated our macro model for the Chicago region with a model that enabled us to look at the impacts on municipalities, of which there are almost 300 within the Chicago metro area, and even down to 30 by 30 meter square land uses. So it's a very, very detailed modeling system. Next slide. And what we looked at is, are we going to be able to accommodate expected growth in population and jobs? And on the left of this picture, you can see the population, and on the right, the employment forecast. And so the dotted line are our macro forecasts of the economy. The purple line, the solid line, is the forecast that comes from this very detailed micro level analysis that goes right down to that cell level. And one of the things we found is we can accommodate the employment, new jobs that are created, because we have a lot of vacant commercial and industrial space. But population is a problem. And as we move out beyond 2030 to 40 to 50, what we found is something of the order of 5 to 7% of the population could not be accommodated. Next slide, please. And so this is something that really concerns us, because it just creates a real challenge, particularly in US metropolitan areas where the communities have control of land use. And so trying to negotiate relationships between those communities is very hard, because we don't have a metropolitan system of government except in one city, Minneapolis, St. Paul. And so the final issue I want to just raise is the link between sustainability and equity. And in the US, as in many developed and developing economies, income inequality has increased in the past 2 decades. And our work has really offered some new insights into this process that goes beyond just looking at Gini indices, but looks at the dynamics of income formation and how that gets translated into increasing or decreasing inequality. But this discussion has focused completely outside the sustainability debate. And so here is one linkage. If we increase density and infilling within the city, we're likely to displace lower income households, forcing them to relocate even farther from current and future jobs, creating a higher probability that they will become unemployed. In the 1980s and 90s, a number of firms relocated from the city to the suburbs. And this made it much more difficult for low-income households to reach the new locations. If they used buses or transit, the trip took more than 1 hour because they had to come into the center and then go out again. Many of them did not have regular access to a car. As a result, they lost their jobs. However, in the last decade, many of these firms have relocated their headquarter functions back into the city center, providing incentives for younger single households to locate close by. So what we're seeing here is some very much demographically induced dynamics that many of our planning analysts have really not accommodated in their thinking. And so what we need to do is ask the question, how are new spatial patterns of activity within metropolitan areas going to affect income inequality? And what are the implications for this for achieving a more sustainable urban region? Next slide, please. And this is the final comments. So what I've talked about is what I call a pre-COVID economy. Will this discussion have to be totally reconsidered in the post-COVID economy? A University of Chicago study estimates that as many as 25% of job days, that's the number of days we spend working, 25% of those will be provided from home this year and next year. How will this affect sustainability? Will vehicle miles traveled increase or decrease? Will more households move out of the city to the suburbs or to rural areas? How will this affect the provision of education, health services, cultural amenities? Will this enhance the development towards more concern with the circular economy? It's something I've only alluded to, but I haven't mentioned very much. And what about those who cannot work from home? Restaurant workers, people who work in grocery stores, hotel employees. What are the equity concerns here? Will the post-COVID economy make the equity problems that I alluded to earlier worse? I have also not discussed the impacts of production fragmentation and the increasing lengths of global value chains on the fact that the delivery of goods now has a much higher transportation intensity of production. And this is something that is not going to really sit very well with concerns of sustainability. At the same time, it's also increased our vulnerability to disruptions. And the recent closure of the Suez Canal, I think, really highlighted just how vulnerable we have become. But on the other side, regions, metropolitan regions in particular, are one and the same time are becoming more competitive with each other, but they're also becoming more complementary. They're much more dependent on each other. And the question is this sustainable not only economically, but environmentally? And to conclude, these are incredibly important challenges. And I hope, Ibu Ova, that some of your students in the new program will take up some of these challenges. And what they will really discover that this is one of the reasons why being a professor is so attractive. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prof. Jeff. I really enjoy your presentations, and I think you did it great. I mean, when you said become a professor is so attractive, and I think you are. Yeah. Thank you so much. I think what we discussed mostly in these presentations before is you want to emphasize what is actually the definitions of economic if we want to understand the sustainability in the full perspective. Thank you so much. So we will continue for the discussions after this, yeah? Then we will heading to the second honorable speakers for today, Bapak Ahmad Gamal. Please, the time is yours, Pak Ahmad Gamal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Ova, and thank you for your presentation, Professor Jeff Ewings. It's very delightful to hear that presentation again. The last time I heard your presentation,
You're muted.
my apologies, I've spoken quite a lot. Thank you very much, Ibu Ova, for the introduction, and thank you very much for your presentation, Professor Jeff Ewings. It brings a lot of good memories when I was there at UIUC and being involved in the real seminars. I, as was introduced by Ibu Ova earlier, was trained in urban and regional planning, and I also teach in urban and regional planning. But in my relation to my responsibility as the Director of Innovation and Science Technopark at UI, I'm requested to present something that is probably slightly different from what Professor Jeff Ewings has presented. So I'll talk about global innovation, and I'll talk about the innovation that has happened and occurred globally as well as here at UI, and what those innovations pose as challenges to our cities and urban areas, and what kind of development trends that are happening globally what that means to urban planning and planning education. So let me start with this, actually, this very simple slide, which basically reminds us about what planning is about. If I simplify it into basically one word definition, planning is about zoning. At least if you look at the US history, planning really started when a property development company called Ambler Realty complains about Euclid Village's zoning code. The zoning code basically rules out their plan for industrial development all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court basically ruled in favor of Euclid, which basically means that the village of Euclid can maintain their zoning code. So planning, at least in this term, is about regulating what people can and cannot do in cities. And I think planning needs to evolve. If we don't evolve, and if planning and planning education don't change, then basically we're not going to be able to respond to the recent developments globally. So I'll talk about four things. I'll talk about global innovation, and then I'll talk about how those global innovation and development trends pose to our cities as challenges. What are the implications to our cities, and what would be the implication to planning education, and how planning education needs to change. So first, let me talk about global innovation and what are the things that have emerged in the 21st century. First of all, of course, what's very exciting is the electrification of mobility. We're looking at new billionaires in the world, and if you just put aside the money, what the money actually represents is how the future is perceived by our society now. Now we're looking at new billionaires in technology platform. Elon Musk is now the richest person in the world. Tesla's shares is the highest in the world right now. Tesla's value as a company is actually larger than four biggest auto corporations combined. So Tesla is actually more valuable than Toyota, Ford, General Motors, and I believe Volkswagen as well. And what this tells you is, if you don't really care about who is the richest person in the world, is that there is a lot of confidence that electrification is the future of our mobility. So there is a very strong demand, although of course it's a small segment of the market, but there is a strong demand, and it's sustainably increasing for electric cars. And it also open roads for electrification competitors. You're looking at the development of very promising companies like NIO in China, Lucid in the US, and Polestar in Europe. So there's a lot of confidence here, and I think that's where we're going in terms of mobility. And we're also looking at a very promising development of aerial vehicles. Aerial vehicles that are used not just by the military, but also aerial vehicles that are for use for civilians. For example, Amazon has experimented with drone delivery. So you should expect that, you would no longer see your post office employee delivering your packages anytime soon. And Dubai has also started testing for drone taxi services. So if you want to move from the northern to the southern part of the city, now you can fly instead of just being stuck in traffic. And I think this is also part of the future of people's and goods mobility, which is up in the air instead of being on the street. And we're also looking at a very rapid development of the use of robotics and the development of artificial intelligence. And in the past, you see the development of robotics in factories, basically in manufacturing facilities, where they basically produce cars and they just want to automate things and want to basically involve less human beings that makes more errors. But now robots and artificial intelligence is used in areas in which companies want to interact with people. So they're no longer just mechanical hard workers. AI is increasingly become sapient robots. The development of AI is basically helping our robots becoming more and more like humans. So they're now more socially interactive robots. And what that means is that, not only our jobs are not secured in the manufacturing areas, but also now in the field of services, maybe robots can also replace human beings. And it really leads to, the thinking of how this is going to change our cities. Basically, what are the implications to our urban areas? And aside of that, we also see a lot of urban challenges. We see challenges in health, we see challenges in the economy, we see challenges in our social relations as well. Of course, the elephant in the room is the pandemic. It's a health crisis at an unprecedented scale. We have seen epidemics. We have seen national epidemics, but at least in our lifetime, none of us has seen a global pandemic. Of course, history taught us that there was a pandemic in the 1920s. That was about 100 years ago. I think, never expected that we would experience a pandemic at a global scale, which is probably much wider scale than the Spanish flu in the 1920s. And it basically creates impedance to mobility, not just international mobility. So we can't travel internationally. We can't travel to the US. We can't travel to Japan or Europe now because of the risk. But it also creates impedance to national mobility, even regional and local mobility. So I can't just go to work now because it poses a health risk, and it also creates or provides the groundwork for the rise of work from home. We're also looking at a global vacancy of office, leisure, and commercial spaces, and we're looking at global discrepancy of safe and sufficient home office spaces. I'm currently not at a home office space. I'm basically at the living room of my house. I'm very grateful that I have this space, but there is a lot of my colleagues who doesn't have this kind of safe, sufficient, and less noisy space in our home. We're also looking at a global rate of infection and mortality, and we're not looking at enough spaces in hospital, morgues, even graveyards. Now in Jakarta, for example, they have created a special graveyard for the victims of COVID-19, just because, one, of course, it provides a health risk to bury the dead at a general public's graveyard, but also because there's not enough space, and we're looking at global reallocation of spatial, financial, and human resources. There is a global rethink about how we should allocate money for what kind of things to develop, instead of roads, buildings, infrastructures. Now we're basically spending money to, for example, develop vaccines, develop tools for home mobility, and so on and so forth. And in the future, we're going to look at more cities, but with fewer jobs. So we're looking at more urban areas, but less or fewer jobs for people to actually fill in. So in the right upper hand corner of the presentation, you can see that, and this is from the OECD prediction. This is not just me saying that, this is a global doom scenario. We're looking at a potential loss of jobs that will be basically reallocated to robots because of the rise of artificial intelligence.
between 2.5 million of jobs to 13.3 million jobs that are going to be at risk from automation by the early 2030s. And how AI could change our job market, you can basically see that, the biggest loser is manufacturing, and then transportation and public administration, and possibly defense as well. And then what's surprising is that even in the field of financial and insurance, you would also see losers. Of course, we're going to see the rise of people working at the health sector. We're going to look at an increase in the need for scientific officers, technical officers, communication specialists, people who are working in hospitality and hospitality management, and teachers. Luckily, I'm in academia, so maybe our jobs is slightly much safer, but maybe not that much safer than people who are working in manufacturing. What will be the implications to our cities? Now, this is how not just me, but how other people have predicted how our urban environment will actually look like in the future. And some of these are actually the real pictures, and not just some sort of a weird scenario about how our cities are going to change in the future. Now we have seen whole cities that are turning as basically a village full of solar panels. That picture on the right upper left upper hand side is basically a solar panel infrastructure. And we're also looking at how houses are going to be more electrified by the development of solar tiles. And we're going to see the end of basically gas stations, and maybe see the change of that into basically electricity mobility filling stations. We're also possibly going to see the end of parking lots, because maybe, especially in a more high-end areas, we're going to see mobility up in the air instead of mobility on the street. And definitely, we're going to need much more energy distributed into households, because now people need to fill up the energy for their basically mobile vehicles at home, instead of being filling them on the street. And what's very important is to really consider to basically nurture jobs in arts, artisans, and basically freelance jobs. In the past, freelance jobs and arts or artisan jobs have not really been considered as good jobs, but really those are the kinds of jobs that basically would survive. If you are one of the key players in manufacturing, then it's good for you. But if you are not, and you're aspiring to be one of the major global center of manufacturing, then most likely you're going to face competition from China, and these days it's going to be a very fierce competition. So maybe think about developing products that have a little differentiation. Stronger differentiation basically creates more niche in the market, and maybe that will help you to basically compete in this kind of market. So how would planning education must change if these are the things that we are facing right now? I think we need to focus much less on zoning and more on the human behavior. The way we regulate activities must evolve as human behavior shifts. If people can fly, then maybe you need to apply a three-dimensional instead of two-dimensional zoning. And because the old classification of activities have shifted, people don't actually go to work and basically commute back to to basically sleep, maybe the old classification of office, residential, or commercial activities no longer fits. I'm not saying that they're obsolete. I'm saying that it's not perfectly well fitted against the urban trends right now. So I think, we must learn a lot from sociologists, anthropologists, psychologists, and epidemiologists about new trends for working, living, and leisure, and we can plan cities accordingly. I think we need to promote much more mixed use and space sharing. I think if you basically listen to what Professor Jeff Ewings had said, if we don't promote mixed use, it's going to be very catastrophic for our urban areas because, maybe there are jobs next to you, but that's probably not the jobs that you want. So you basically want people to basically live a little bit closer to where they work. And that can be made possible if, there is job and there is suitable and good jobs there. And it's impossible for you to allow for the relocation of jobs and good jobs if you don't allow for mixed useness and some sort of space sharing. And I want to highlight a little bit about space sharing because, now as people work from home more, their leisure spaces need to be even much closer to their residences. It's very frustrating if you live in a place where there is no urban park. I have a 2-year-old daughter, and every single week I have to travel between 5 and 10 kilometers to basically find an urban park. And it's very frustrating to me. We're actually very grateful that we have the means to do that, but I would imagine that some people actually don't live within the distance or within the means that would enable them to do so. So we really need to avoid the chance of people being trapped in a very small space. In many cases in urban areas, some people actually live in a studio apartment, 3 by 6 square meters, for example, for a 2-year pandemic. And some people have actually said that we need to anticipate for a pandemic that stays here forever because of the mutation of the virus. And most importantly, I think we need to start thinking about how urban analytics can help us to navigate through the rapid and not just rapid, but the very, very rapid and very, very wide-ranging changes that are going on in the world right now. So a little bit of examples of what we do here. For example, we also help people to not just plan cities, but we also help people who want to learn of using big data to understand how people mobility actually affect the way we deal with the pandemic. And this is part of the example. So I have been involved with the big data team at UI here, which involves 8 people from 8 faculties. So not just people from one school or one department, but actually people from the College of Medicine, people from the College of Public Health, people from engineering, people from science, people from, all over the place, basically, try to use big data here. We're very grateful that we're supported by Facebook to use the data to basically map people's mobility, which is defined by the blue lines, and how that correlates with new cases of COVID-19. We have a very good data to be able to map that out. And if I use a different kind of representation, I can show you that whenever there is a orange or red color, which basically tells you that there is a certain increase in people's mobility, you see the uprise in cases, basically. So we're very grateful that we have access to this big data, and we're very grateful that there's the spirit of interdisciplinary collaboration at UI that would help us understand these things. And we also developed kind of new tools.
You have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I have like 2 more slides. I think it's perfect timing. And just to provide you with kind of an idea of how we basically start developing tools that will help not just planners but also basically policymakers and urban managers to use big data in other forms, which is in spatial data, how they could integrate basically LiDAR data, aerial photography, and use that to basically guide the development of their spatial data and spatial planning, and develop a three-dimensional cadastral information and help them monitor basically urban development, the violation of building codes, violation of for example, building permits and violation of basically the urban. Then you would have the capability to basically enforce taxation. And if you have perfect surveillance, then you could basically increase income from at least 4 different channels. One, you could impose fines for people who would violate their building permits, but also you would increase the tax basis. And even for people who are already registered to pay their property taxes, you could properly charge them with a proper rate. And this is kind of an example that we do an exercise. If Depok, for example, where UI is located right now, use this technology that we have developed, they would increase their income from local property tax by 25%. 25% means 77 billion rupiah. And that is very significant amount of money that can be received annually. So that is my presentation today. I hope that helps you learn some stuff. I hope that will also encourage you to basically come to us and basically study at UI as well. So back to you, Ibu Ofa. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Pak Ahmad Gamal from the ISTP, Universitas Indonesia. So I think the future is up, right? Actually, when we discuss about a lot of innovations and technology, I believe we thought at the moment we are maybe in the future because we are already talking something that we couldn't believe or couldn't imagine before. And I think from your presentations, it brought us a lot of positive thinking to develop into that way. Thank you so much. Okay, then Pak Gamal and also Prof. Jeff and Pak Andi, I think we will heading to the first discussions of this session. Can you turn on the camera?
Yeah, I think the host should allow us to start our video.
Okay, thank you. Technical teams, please open the camera for Prof. Jeff and also Pak Andi.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Now we can see. Okay, thank you so much. We will heading to the first sessions of discussions. This is mainly talking about your presentations, yeah. Prof. Jeff, Pak Gamal, also Mas Andi, our new program, the Master Program of Urban Planning and Urban and Regional Planning, actually comes from different or various backgrounds. We will have students from architecture, civil engineering, urban planning, and geographics, yeah, for example. And also, we also have the faculty member from various faculty and also department in Universitas Indonesia. For example, adding to the architecture and civil engineering department in Faculty of Engineering, we also have lecturer from law and also from economic and business and also mathematical and science faculty. So heading to this kind of various multidisciplines and interdisciplinary background, I would like to address the questions to you, Prof. Jeff. What is actually, yeah, maybe you can take a short, brief, and also maybe general that helps us to increase our awareness about what is actually the nature of sustainability in urban and regional planning. That's as simple as that. Thank you, Prof. Still mute, Prof. Sorry.
I think the answer to that it is evolving so rapidly that I think it's very hard to characterize it. And I think that what planning departments have begun to realize, and Kamal's presentation, I think, illustrated that very well, is that planners can no longer be myopic in their thinking. They have to lean very heavily on contributions from people outside the planning profession. Illinois, for a long time, for example, was one of the few departments that had a lawyer as one of the professors. And people said, why do we have that? Well, as Pak Kamal said, zoning was so important and undergirded a lot of planning thinking. But what we haven't had is, I think, a lot of concern to integrate this. And I think it's one thing to have people from different disciplines together to address issues like sustainability, but they've got to learn how to work together. And one of the problems that I've had with interdisciplinary operations is that often you have very nice conversations, but you don't have any interaction. And I think that our colleagues in engineering have got to learn how to talk to us and to listen to us. And at the same time, we've got to understand how psychologists and sociologists, economists and lawyers, how they think about some of these issues. And we need to develop some sort of common language. And that's been missing. And so a lot of the work in sustainability has been very ad hoc, with a couple of people getting together and working on a specific problem. For example, a lot of my colleagues in Japan are very concerned about promoting the notions of a circular economy, which is, I think, one of your other questions. But it's not consistent. It's not embedded in the curriculum. It's not embedded in the thinking of the students and the faculty. And I think that's one of the issues. The second comment and the final comment I'll make is universities have got to change. And it's very, very hard. A lot of people love to talk about interdisciplinary work, collaboration, and so forth. But we've got a system in the university where you're rewarded from how you're evaluated by your peers in your own discipline. And that makes it very, very hard to engage in something which is speculative, which is innovative, unless you have tenure. I mean, somebody my age can do this because, they can't do anything. But, for a young person, and these are the people we really want to encourage, the incentives are not aligned. So if you wanted to have a sustainability program, you're going to face the sort of tensions that somebody in an economics department who wants to work in this is going to still have to publish in economics journals. And likewise for somebody from sociology and so forth. And this makes it very, very difficult. So Ibu, the real challenge for you is finding imaginative people, finding creative ways for them to be what I would call schizophrenic, so they can work on these imaginative issues at the same time they can satisfy their colleagues in their home discipline. And that's going to be probably the biggest challenge facing your program right now.
Thank you so much, Prof. James. I think you mentioned a lot of things that need to be considered for us as well. Like, for example, we have a very nice conversations, but no interactions. Yeah. When you said we need to have like common language, but maybe probably we still work on our own. Yeah, but we didn't really realize on that. And I don't know. I think you also mainly talk about the what is actually the most important thing to work outside of the campus as well, instead of only doing things in the campus. Yeah. And here maybe the last point that I put as my notes is the university got a need to change, right? That's why I would like to address these questions to Pak Gamal, heading to the University of Indonesia, maybe the conditions in Indonesia, maybe. I would like to extend the questions, maybe probably the same. What is the nature of sustainability in urban and regional context, but specifically maybe in universities context and also in Indonesia. Thank you, Pak Gamal, please.
I'll try to be brief because you're asking a very big question. I think change requires courage, and change requires resources, and sometimes it's resources that are very scarce. It's resources that we don't always have, and when you have resources, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can do whatever you want. Sometimes it's just a matter of how you allocate those resources. So, for example, Professor Hewings had mentioned about how the system incentivizes for disciplinary development instead of interdisciplinary kind of interaction or collaboration. UI has actually, especially at the field of research and innovation, had actually provided a lot of incentive for interdisciplinary development, because all of the research grants that are provided through UI, for example, requires at least 3 faculty collaboration. So you can't just ask for a research grant from UI, basically proposing that all of your team members are going to be planners, for example. They need to be coming from at least 3 different colleges, right? So Faculty of Science, Faculty of Engineering, Faculty of Economics and Business, for example. That's how it works. We provide incentive. But we're also dealing with the fact that when we're being ranked globally, we want to be competitive as well. But our scholars are basically evaluated by global rankers such as Times Higher or QS or other ranking system through their disciplinary contribution. So if I publish at the Journal of Big Data, for example, because that's really what I'm really interested in, I would contribute to the field of computer science, but it doesn't necessarily provide enough contribution to the School of Planning as being perceived by the metric system in the global ranking system. And that's quite frustrating if you look at it from the university perspective, right? Now, you want to basically support interdisciplinary collaboration, and it basically leads to the expected innovation. But at the same time, if you have so much money, then you can do both, right? You can do disciplinary development as well as interdisciplinary collaboration. But now you have to really, really evaluate what is the optimum outcome of having this kind of policy. And the case that I just mentioned, what if I published at in Journal of Big Data, has already happened, right? I mean, I published in Journal of Big Data because I write about how we do urban analytics and how urban analytics help inform policymakers, and that helps maybe in the number of publication, but that doesn't really help the School of Planning establish its reputation globally in terms of ranking. Although probably it will increase people's interest if there is enough innovative people that would basically want to equip themselves with that kind of skills, right? So we're now hopefully thinking that it's not just the university that changes, but the global perception of skill and global perception of innovation also shifts. And hopefully that happens before we already invest so much in those kinds of policies. So that's my response.
Thank you so much, Pak Gamal. I think, again, about digital urban economics, circular economy, you mentioned as well about actually what happened in Indonesia and also in Universitas Indonesia. The movement is there, right? We are going through to have this multidisciplinary project, multidisciplinary innovations, or a lot of global thinking. But I would like again to address it to Prof. Jeffs. Prof. Jeffs, in your opinion, heading to this kind of movement, that we have to deal with a lot of digital economic development technology that runs so fast, and at the same time we need to have the evaluations at the same time. Otherwise we will not get there, the goals. What do you think it will be the challenges or the main obstacle, or I don't know, something that necessary for us to evaluate or self-evaluate? Thank you, Prof. Hewings.
Yeah, I think it goes back to my earlier point that, and I think Pak Gamal also alluded to this, we've got this tension between what you want to do and the constraints of a university, which is very much departmental orientated. And those dynamics are very difficult to change. And I know from time as a department head, when young faculty who were very innovative but didn't follow the standard path had a very, very tough time when it came time for promotion and things like the granting of tenure. And so somehow there's got to be a change in the way in which those individuals are evaluated. And that will require a recognition that the department may have to be much more imaginative in terms of finding appropriate referees to evaluate the work. So for example, if Pak Gamal was coming up for promotion in the Fine and Applied Arts at Illinois, and somebody said, the Journal of Big Data, what is that? Is that a planning journal? I mean, how do we evaluate it? I mean, it's incredibly difficult because people thinking very narrowly. And what it's going to require is some leadership in the university to have an imaginative dean who is going to say, I understand that this is new, that this is going to be innovative, and we've got to accommodate. So when we hire younger faculty, we're going to tell them, we don't want you to stop thinking in an interdisciplinary context. We want you to be innovative. We want you to be imaginative, and we're going to support you. And we're going to make sure that you're not penalized because you don't publish in the Journal of Planning Research, or you don't publish in a major journal in economics or in sociology or whatever your major field is. And I think unless you do something like that, you're going to really diminish the innovative impact of new thinking that takes place in programs. Or you're just going to have to be patient and say, when that person gets promoted and has tenure, then that person can start to be imaginative. But that's really not a good way to encourage innovation in young people. And so it's a problem, and it's not just your problem. It's a problem everywhere. I mean, and I have the same conversations in Japan, in England, in Australia. I just recently were on the phone to somebody in Spain, a similar problem. So it's not an Indonesian problem. It's an academic problem.
Thank you. So it's about sustainable future cities program, right?
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Prof. Hewings, and also I started with the statement about the university needs to change, and then Pak Gamal adding that it's not because we have the courage and the resources we can do everything as we want. And he also implies that the global perceptions and the global skills need to change. Yeah, I think then I would like to have the opinions from our chair of urban planners. Please, Pak Andi, maybe you would like to address some comments from this discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, Thank you, Ova. Prof. Jeffs, thank you again, and Gamal for inspiring presentation this morning. But I'd like to link both of you presentation. Yeah, I mean, let's take an example of jobs. Yeah, when Gamal said there will be a change of jobs, and there will be also change of the movement. When Prof. Jeff mentioned about the regional economic model, that we have a very basic understanding of interactions, but the phenomenon now, I think in Indonesia, at least I saw there is also not only needs, yeah, but also is happening that some of the jobs environment become a city. For example, the industrial park become industrial city, now become new township. We have Cikarang, for example, in 1995, we only have 50,000, now become 1.2 million only in the very short time. So job itself then try to internalize externality that they have to become a township. And if you see, maybe I saw one picture that can give an idea how then in Jakarta, we have so many clustering this township. This also in Tangerang, also driven by the industrials. And also later on in Serang, there are also some sports city that will be also generated in the between Serang and Tangerang, and of course Bekasi as well. Yeah. So my point of view, what your offer with the model, I think it's relevant for us, but now the issues it becomes more challenging because there are also disruptive innovation, changing of jobs, and I think it's not easy for us to diagnose, but at least with the university, then we can develop more research build on that things. Yeah, at this moment I think we are still also figuring out how urban rural linkage, for example, for the goods flow, yeah, not only for the services or people flows, because it's very fast our rural converted into urban area. So this is also our issues in this case. So maybe what we can take from these two presentations this morning, maybe we need also to increase our imagination on measuring the sustainability of urbans. When Prof. Jeff introducing VMT, vehicle miles time, maybe there is also people near transit. Yeah, so maybe we need to enforce our local government, because Prof. Jeff, in Indonesia, we have 21 metropolizing regions, and 10 becomes the priority now under 5 years national development term. Yeah, so it's very serious issue. That's why I think maybe the question is size is matter or not at this moment, because I tend to see that our cities become more and more larger, but at the same time we lack of efficiency. And once again, yeah, it's about how we measure them. Our local government need to be advised that maybe size is not matter anymore, but the important thing is how then we can make efficiency in the good flows and also people flows in terms of jobs. Yeah, maybe that's my short comment in this first round. Back to you, Ova.
Thank you so much, Pak Andi. I would like to comment, but we have so limited time. Maybe Prof. Jeff or Pak Gamal would like to counter a little bit before I address the questions from the audience. Thank you.
Okay. No, I don't want to counter. I have a question for you all. Pak Bambang, when he was at Bapenas, was charged by your president to explore the relocation of the capital city. And so it seems to me that one of your real challenges and real opportunities would be, what can you contribute to that in terms of rethinking? And what additional dimensions can you bring to the debate that may not have been considered? And I've studied very much the case of Brasilia in Brazil and Canberra in Australia, and they really struggled because they didn't really fully comprehend what people wanted in a place. But that has changed, and now both of them have become very, very attractive places for people to live and work. So as you're thinking about this, I think this is a unique opportunity for your new department to play a leadership role in contributing to the debate, coming up with new ideas, taking some of Pak Gamal's ideas about the role of innovation and the changing nature of jobs and so on and so forth. I think this is really exciting. So perhaps this is something for you guys to think about, and maybe another session you might want to have a focus on this.
Thank you so much, Prof. Jeff. So the door is widely open, yeah, Prof. Thank you. Pak Gamal, do you want to say something?
No, I just want to highlight and to express my gratitude because Pak Andi, has provided us with great insights. I think it's necessary for us to start working, not just interdisciplinary among us, right, academia, but also with practitioners as well. And I think I'm very happy to be involved with whatever Pak Andi have at IAP, at the Indonesian Planning Association. And I would be very happy to incorporate IAP's activities into the program to basically help our students to understand how this is actually done professionally, right? Because it's important to understand the challenges, not just in academia. I think, I spoke about the challenges in academia. Professor Ewings also talked about the challenges in academia. And sometimes we have to kind of understand what are the challenges that these students are going to face when they're, when they're going to the job market, when they're actually working for, local governments, when they're dealing with developers, when they're dealing with their supervisors in planning agencies or in, development agencies. We kind of have to understand what they are going to face and how we're going to prepare them to face those kinds of challenges. So thank you very much, Pak Andi.
Okay. Thank you so much for addressing such issues, Pak Gamal. Yes, we'll be delightful to have the support from IAP, that's for sure. So with this consent, I think I would like to close the first sessions. Then I would like to go to the second sessions. This is the questions from the floor. Okay, so first questions is addressed to Prof. Ewings, coming from Freddy Fasrija in Jakarta. The question is, with the recent data technology advancement and IoT, we can comprehend better about society behavior. In your opinion, how can this technology be harnessed to create inclusive and sustainable urban economic development? Thank you.
Do I have an hour to respond?
Maybe a day.
But Freddie, that's a very challenging question. I think that the real dilemma, I think, in the last decade has been that data provision has grown much more rapidly than the adjustment we've made in our analytical frameworks. And I think it's only been in the last few years that we've gradually seen some catching up with this, so that we are able to do some evaluation of real-time monitoring of activities and incorporating those feedback effects into how we make some adjustments. But we still come from an era in which our models were based on annual data. We've learned how to disaggregate them a little bit, but not very effectively. Spatial structure was often very constrained by administrative units. And I think that what is going to happen now is a whole new generation of what we might call, if not continuous time modeling, just-in-time modeling, but the ability to be able to see how things are evolving and make adjustments accordingly. And that is something that our current models don't do very effectively, because we don't have the analytical tools. They have not yet been developed. So the sorts of issues that Pak Andi and Pak Gamal were talking about, I think are going to be a real source for innovation in the way in which you teach and train students. And if I could just take 1 minute to address Pak Gamal's question about training people for working outside of academia, that's very important. And the most important thing you can do is develop an internship program, give the students an opportunity to go out and spend 1 semester working for a planning organization, working for a local government, working for a provider of big data, working for somebody like Facebook, and learning how to use those data in a very imaginative and effective way. I think that would be tremendous, because it would solve 2 problems. One is you get the students motivated. Secondly, you get the private and public sectors to understand that you're making a huge contribution to helping them address the problems and challenges they face.
Okay, thank you so much, especially for the last things that you mentioned, Prof. Huings. I think this is opening our eyes, either from the professional way and also from the academicians. And also, I think this is most important from the program itself. That's why we have a support from the professional association from IAP. Yeah, thank you. Okay, then I would address quickly to the second questions. Now I will have the questions to Pak Gamal. I'm sorry, once again, we have so many questions, but I don't think the time I can manage, but let's see. So the second questions come from Zaki in Bandung. It's about big data. Big data technologies have become essential to the functionings of cities. Consequently, urban process and practices are becoming highly responsive to a form of a data-driven urbanisms that is the key mode of productions for smart cities. To plan such cities, what essentials data that we have to collect in order to plan one? Thank you.
Okay, I think I need to clarify one thing. Whenever we talk about big data, it seems to me that what is interesting for people is to talk about the technology, right? To talk about the algorithms, to talk about the sensors that we have to use to basically generate those data. We want to talk about the computers in which we basically process those data. But that's not what really matters for urban planners, right? And I think this is kind of a thin, fine line. I think when I said we need more interdisciplinary collaboration, what I don't expect is to see, younger generation of urban planners to basically transform themselves into computer scientists. That's not what I was expecting. What I was expecting was basically urban planners, newer generation of urban planners who probably understand a little bit about computer science and is capable of using analytics from big data to basically guide them in their work, right? So basically, if you ask what kind of data do you need, well, basically that's the same data that you would actually need for planning purposes. You would need data about people's movement. You would basically need data about people's activities, right? And to a certain extent, maybe you need to have a data about, the built environment itself, right? How much have we actually built? Where are our resources, and so on and so forth. So there's not really something, or there's not really anything new about these data. These are the kinds of things, the kinds of information that we have always required when we basically do our planning. Now, with the development of computing and the provision of big data, now we have all of this information just in time, and we have this information at an unprecedented scale. Right now we have very big data. What that means is that we have data about more people than just a certain number of people that we can basically survey. So it's just a shift in how we generate those data and how we analyze them, instead of basically generating new kinds of information and new kinds of variables that you want to basically monitor. I hope that helps.
Okay, thank you, Pak Gamal. So I would like to go to the third questions. This questions comes from Alex in Gaharu, and this is for you both. Yeah. So the question is just like this. As students, I read about shrinking cities such as Detroit. How do you think the rise of digital-based business and trend of work from home will affect big cities like Jakarta? Maybe starting from Prof. Jeff first. Thank you.
Okay. I think that one of the things I have learned from 4 decades of doing research is not to extrapolate from data which is recently developed and represents a significant break in what has been happening in the past. And I reflect on what happened in the 1970s, where energy prices went up, and everybody said that people will move closer to the central city so they won't have to spend as much money on gasoline to get to work. It didn't happen. And the reason it didn't happen is people forgot that the costs of relocation are not zero. And it's very expensive finding places. If you move closer to the city, prices are going to be higher, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's a lot of speculation now about what's going to happen. 6-7 months ago, people said as a result of COVID, work from home would become the dominant mode. In the last few months, a number of firms have gone to a hybrid model where they've had their employees work from home for 2 days a week and then come into the office 3 days a week. What they have found is the employees are there for all the 3 days, not just, they don't choose one day and then go home again. What they've missed is all that social interaction, that informal transfer of knowledge. And this is something I find as a professor. I can have this sort of conversation with one of my students, but then 5 or 10 minutes later, he or she may have another question, but feels uncomfortable about bothering me. Whereas if I'm in the office, they would knock on my door and say, "Hey, you got 5 minutes? Can I talk to you?" So it's all that informal interaction that we're missing. And the question is, can we replicate that in some way at the moment? So as I look at cities right now, I would be very hesitant to make a forecast to say people will not be going back to offices, people will continue to work from home, et cetera, et cetera. I think it will become more of a hybrid. And what that is going to do is change the structure of the city. And some recent work with a planning PhD student at Illinois has shown very clearly that, particularly among the younger people in the workforce, access to the central business district is not the most important in their decision making. They want to be close to other things rather than the center of work. And yet all of our analytical models have this homework interaction as the dominant characteristic to determine where people live. But if people are working from home, then that changes the whole context. And that's where I think some of this new data that's becoming available and getting the real-time evaluations of this, I think are going to be valuable. So thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for this. So before we have the same questions to Pak Gamal, I would like to add the questions again because it's more or less similar. This is for the fourth questioner from Tubagus Syarif in Bekasi. How architecture could respond to the current state of pandemic along with the increasing number of AI which are replacing some human jobs? Maybe you can also connected to the previous questions in Jakarta case. Thank you.
Yeah, I think if you listen carefully, what Professor Hewings had said, it's more important to predict about the changes rather than to basically emphasize about what the changes have produced as a result to our cities, right? So you look at Detroit as a bad case study. You look at Detroit as an example of a city that is less flexible when all of the car manufacturing jobs basically were exported to China, and they didn't really respond well to that, and now it's kind of shrinking. But it's a byproduct, right, of what is more important to basically anticipate, which is the higher and more abstract level of change. In that case, that's kind of where your manufacturing job is going to go. Nowadays, as Professor Hewings had mentioned, what you really need to anticipate is kind of the rise of work from home. And in the future, maybe there are other things as well, right? So understanding the changes in people's behavior matters a lot more. It matters not only for architects, but matters for urban planners as well, right? So now, as people work more from home, for example, maybe your conventional design of houses no longer works. Now you probably need to have some spaces that would, I'm really hesitant to say home office because it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to basically incorporate all of the office functionality at home. But at least, for example, understanding that, at a certain times during the day, at a certain time during the week, there's going to be that kind of need for a certain person in the house to basically have a silent space, of space to really focus on doing something. That is probably, kind of a change to, our future houses, for example. And understanding that shift in people's behavior and where people do stuff is much more important than, anticipating whether our cities are going to shrink, our offices are going to, basically be vacant, and so on and so forth. Now, the $1 million question is, of course, how many office spaces, how much office spaces do we actually need? How much safe space do we actually need at home? Now, that requires a further kind of investigation that, probably this 2-hour webinar is not going to be suffice for that. But I would encourage people to look at the data, and despite the fact that it's going to be very difficult to forecast, I think it's going to be worthwhile to basically learn and try to ask people. Don't just look at the data, right? I mean, try to ask people. I think what Professor Hewings had mentioned about the social interaction, I'm experiencing that as well with my staff here at the Directorate of Innovation, right? It's very difficult to just call people and have a 5-minute discussion about how we're going to address this proposal, for example, right? This particular document. I have to basically set up a meeting to basically call someone. And when we have that meeting, that person needs to basically look at the document as well, right? Which is, somewhere in the cloud. So there's just so much time that we spend about planning how we're going to do work in which is unnecessary if we basically are all working at the office. So don't just look at the numbers. Talk to people, understand why they do what they do and how they do it now, to basically help you predict how it's going to happen in the future.
Thank you so much, Pak Gamal. I think the main concern is about the big data or data. Data is important, but also be careful about the data. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So due to the time constraint, I cannot really read all of the questions, but I will take one more question to you, Prof. Hewings. But if you may, I don't know. If you may, please reply this shortly. This is from Benny Hermawan in Jakarta. Part of the government, what is quick yielding and high impact in responsible to these changes, while resolving the changing urban existing problems? Thank you, Prof. Huings.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the first part of the question.
Yeah, as part of the government, what is quick yielding and high impact in responding to these changes while resolving the changing urban existing problems? Is it clear?
Yeah, that's very, very difficult. I think part of the dimension there is an important political dimension, and that is that the people who make those decisions often have to be reelected. So they have an incentive to do things which are going to yield benefits that will help them get reelected, as opposed to hopefully the people who are trained in the new program and planning are going to be thinking much longer term. And I think that the real danger right now is people making short-run decisions that might, I think Gamal mentioned this, sort of have a path dependency that will preclude our making further adjustments later. And I think the real issue that he also mentioned is we shouldn't be training people who are computer architects. I think that's not something we need to have in a planning department. What we want is people who are going to be imaginative and thinking about really creative solutions to some of these problems. And I think the sort of the short run nature of government decision making is going to be a real challenge for you as to how you accommodate that. Because am I, as a politician, going to be concerned about something that will only make an impact in 20 years from now? Very few politicians have that degree.
Thank you so much. So in a way, this is the creative solutions is the key. Thank you, Prof. Huings. Okay, before I get back to Pa Andi for the comments, I would like to give a homework to Prof. Huings and also Pa Gamal, because this will be the final wrap-up questions. What will be, how should we respond to the sustainability of future cities and digital urban economics development? Globally to you, Prof. Huings, and locally to Indonesia, to Pa Gamal. Thank you so much. Keep the questions, and then I would like to go to Pa Andi. Pa Andi, please comment for our second session's discussion. Thank you so much.
Yeah. First, maybe that interest to my mind is that when we introduce the interdisciplinary framework for our planning professional, is try to be able to hear in the many and various language of disciplines. So what IAP tried to emphasize is the capability to synthesize, because if you don't understand what a data scientist means with the ability of themselves to processing data, then the planners cannot elaborate and cannot synthesize, and then they cannot make a recipe for the problems. So that's why in one of the sessions in mentoring for the startup, that I try to make up some, let's say, a protocol for the planners is making a right questions first, and the questions departed from the needs of the planners himself or themselves to plan the cities or the regions that they take. So that's the first that I can also chip into the discussion. The second thing is that what is the millennial generations imagine about the cities? Yeah, maybe it's different with the others, or let's say colonial. In our joke is colonial generations. Yeah? Maybe for them it's not important more to have assets. Yeah, because they can be a global citizens. They can move around. They can stay maybe 2 years in Paris, they can stay 2 years in London, and maybe 2 years in Labuan Bajo, for example. Yeah. So again, IAP tried to make one initial research with Cisco and ITB at that time that we call next generation cities, next gen cities. That maybe from that point of view, we make a survey for the millennial generation. What is the capital city look like in their imaginations? And then that's interesting part that 8 indicator of the smart one, for example, like the describing factors look similar with the indicator of people near transit. Yeah? So the millennial in our survey tends to choose the city that can allow them to select public transportation, and they can move easily with no longer for the private cars or the big houses in the peri-urban. So that's one of the interesting, and maybe need more development for that kind of things. So again, there are a lot of things that we can discuss, Opaya, but at least these 2 points can we take for our future collaborations between practitioners, IAP, and also the academia like the University of Indonesia to do, let's say, more sharpened and more contextual to our development. Yeah, back to you, Pak.
Thank you so much, Pak Andi. Yeah, okay. I think thank you very much. To be short, maybe despite of seeing the challenges, we see also a lot of opportunities, right? Yes, thank you. So before we heading to the final decisions, final evaluations to Prof. Hewings and also Pak Gamal, I would like to mention about the 5 names, the lucky names for the question for today. First one is Freddy Fakhrizal in Jakarta. Second, Zaki in Bandung. Third, Alex in Gaharu. Fourth, Tubagus in Bekasi. And fifth, Benny Hermawan in Jakarta. So congrats to all of you. Please contact the committee for further information. Thank you. So now, Prof. Hewings, let me hear your comments. How should we respond, Prof? Thank you.
I think I'm going to be very self-serving here. I think one of the innovations that we were able to produce at Illinois was forming my lab that brought people from a number of different disciplines together in one room. So they were not locked in their little caves with no interaction between them. And I think over the 30 years, what I've been amazed at is when people sit together and they talk together, they begin to understand how their different disciplinary perspectives come to bear on problems. And they end up often working together, writing papers. I think being able to create some sort of lab environment like this in your program, I think is going to be very important to train a new generation of planners who have the ability to talk and interact with people from a variety of different disciplines. It doesn't mean they have to be specialists in that, but at least have a really good understanding. And the second one, to just comment on Andy's very important comment, we have perhaps to rethink what the next generations are going to want in their life and what they want the city and the areas in which they live to look like. And you are right, the millennials in Chicago, they don't buy houses, they don't buy cars, they don't buy bicycles, they don't buy furniture. They are very, very mobile in the sense that their daily activities and their working activities. And in fact, one British bank, it was announced today, is offering its employees the ability to spend up to 2 years outside the country. You know, they can work essentially remotely or in an office in another city because they're recognizing that this current generation does not have a lifestyle that marries the sort of lifestyle style that I had. Okay, and I think that's important. But really, I think you've got to be innovative in the way that you train these planners and not do the same old stuff that everybody has. Do something imaginative. Do something that really makes a huge difference for the country.
Thank you, Prof. Lewis. We'll do our best. So this is for us all, okay? Pak Andi, also Pak Gamal. Okay, so your turn, Pak Gamal, please. You're still muted, Pak.
Yeah, I always do that. So I think if I can highlight something that is very important from what Professor Hewings mentioned is that you need to encourage exploratory opportunistic networking sessions among your students, right? So there's no shame in basically making them get together and encourage them to basically work on something that is very exploratory. So it's maybe not well structured from the very beginning. Provide them with a goal, provide them with a particular project, provide them with a particular milestone for them to achieve. For example, you need to publish something at a certain within a certain amount of time, or you need to basically finish a particular project within a certain amount of time. But don't tell them exactly what, right? Make sure that it's exploratory. Make sure that it's problem solving. Make sure that they engage with their users, their stakeholders. So make sure that that is a real problem instead of just something that is made up. Make sure that they're future problem solvers, and make sure they're problem solvers who would listen to their colleagues from other disciplines and not just the users themselves. So make it a real problem-solving projects. Make it with proper milestones, but encourage them to be exploratory at a certain at the same time. Make yourself comfortable with the opportunistic behavior of networking with different people every day. That's something that I would say would be very helpful for your program.
Okay, thank you so much, Pak Gamal. So a lot of information, a lot of important informations that I got from these two last final questions and also comments. But I would like to address that both of you clearly saying that it's necessary to talk, but it's more necessary to listen. Thank you so much. Yeah. Okay. Then before we end these sessions, we will heading to our conclusion remarks. So our team already collect all of the informations for today, but before that, maybe we would like to come up to very important announcements, please, the team. Yeah. Okay, so again, back to the master program of urban and regional planning. Here we will open the second round of intake from June 7th until July 9th, 2021. We already closed for the first one, and we have competitive numbers for the registrants. Don't worry, we still have the second round. Thank you so much. Yeah, okay, again, now we will heading to the conclusions. I will read them for you. I think I will read it fast. Thank you so much for the vitamins for today. This is not only vitamins A, B, C, but maybe A, B, T to Z, maybe, and also A accent to Z accent probably. From the speaker one, Prof. Jeffrey Hewings, BA, MA, PhD. Interdependence requires movement by increasing housing densities and decreasing home work distance to encourage a more sustainable city. Sustainability is linked to equity, especially within the metropolitan area. Spatial patterns of activities within the metropolitan area could affect the citizens' income equality, which relates to the economic sustainability of the regions. During COVID-19 pandemic, people's lifestyle changes to work from home. The next challenge future cities would face is how will this affect spatial design and sustainability. Now we'll go to the second speaker, Pak Ahmad Gamal, PhD.
The global innovations, electrifications is future of our mobility. Drone delivery, robotics, AI leads to less need for human labor. These technologies' growth affects the availability of employment, the economy, and the urban area. Cities of futures may look different than what we know now. Landscape and infrastructure will change, as well as living conditions, more vertical development, expanded energy distributions to households. Last, mixed-use space sharing as a new form of homes should be adequate to promote well-being, yet also closer to work, leisure, and other basic human needs in order to reduce the need for mobility. So now the notes from our panelist, Dr. Hendrikus Andi Simarmata. The change of job patterns of human movements become the background of the phenomenon common found in Indonesia. Zones that used to be for economic activities are now transferred into living areas. These residential developments are found around industrial or commercial areas as an attempt to bring home closer to work. It is important to have collaboration between planners and government to achieve efficient and sustainable cities. So as a wrap up of us all, as we address the issues of sustainability, planners need to dig deeper into the economic structure and understand the whole dimensions. Planning education focuses on collaborations to address different issues and have an involved solution. The interdisciplinary study focuses on the new trends to plan cities that are more suited for the human as inhabitants. Thank you so much for today, for the discussions, for everything that we got for today. I hope to all of you who's staying in YouTube or listening to the YouTube, I hope that a lot of things that you can be taken by home from all of this important person. Again, thank you so much for participating in Big Webinar Series 11. Do not hesitate to give us any feedbacks regarding this webinar simply by typing the below link into your browser. Again, thank you so much for our support to the EIP, especially to Pak Andi Simarmata. Thank you so much. Now I will invite all of the team here before we close. Don't forget to follow our social media platforms. We have Instagram, we have also YouTube, and we have also Facebook. You can just stay online with us. Okay, please come in to all of the group. I would like to introduce you to our very important person here. Then we will take a picture. Prof. Hewings, Pak Gamal, also Pak Andi. As I mentioned before, I didn't work alone. Today we were accompanied by like 10 or 12 students and also young lecturers to have this webinar happen and running smoothly. Yeah. Okay, so we will invite them into the team, please. To all of you, you can open the camera now. So we have actually basically divided into 4 groups. We have the first group from the material group, who will collect all of the information gathered around the world and also from your CV especially. The second one, we have the group from proposal, who would take the funding and also the sponsorship. And then the third one, we have from marketing, who organize the marketing things. Otherwise, we will not have this marketing things distributed. And the last one, we have the technical teams. This is we have persons in Zoom and also we have person in YouTube. Thank you. Okay, where are the others? Are they too shy to join us today? Okay, let me call. Okay, thank you. Yeah. So prepare for the photo group sessions. I think the rest will come up. I think we just share the group into the WhatsApp group. Okay, take. I will count into 3. Yeah. Say cheese. 1, 2, 3. Okay, one more time. Give your best smile. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you so much to everybody. On behalf of Big Family BIG webinar, I would like to say stay happy, stay healthy, and also happy Ramadan, happy fasting month to all of you. Then we will have a short information that we won't be able to do the webinar during the Ramadan month. We will come back in June, probably June 2021. Thank you so much once again. Okay, we will have another member here. Last point. Is it okay to have a picture again? Yeah.
Sure.
I think
Okay.
one person just joined.
Yeah, I think we will have more pieces, but let's see. Nilam,
Maybe they are tired.
maybe because we have two condensed discussion today, right? It's very beautiful discussion. Thank you so much to all of you. Okay, again, 1, 2, 3, cheese. Thank you so much once again. Bye-bye. Assalamualaikum.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
So
Prof.
Take care.
Jeff,
Thank you, Ova, for the
Kamal,
invitation.
Ova, dan yang lainnya.
Kamal,
Makasih.
take care.
Thank you, Jeff.
Pak
Take
Andi,
care.
thank you.
Ya,
Bye-bye now.
bye.
Thank you.